One of my most iconic videos was a masterpiece Storytime animation video, congratulating them on their great content. And then a year later, I made another great video on the animation community, portraying them in an even better light. Those days are behind me sadly. I've grown a lot though, mentally, physically, and my taste in content has changed too. And that's why I'm an avid Logan Paul fan.
Aw, that's fucking weird.
Fuck. Come on, who couldn't love this guy? He's a really good boxer, he's got a really nice girlfriend, and he's a Storytime animator. What? My favorite type of YouTube content? Coupled with my favorite YouTuber? Boy, how did this happen? In case you don't know Logan Paul is a man from Ohio. He started his career making vines, which are really funny. God. And he moved to YouTube and dominated for a while. And he made a pretty small misstep, nothing major, and went back to the bottom, and he had to work his way back up to the top. And he certainly tried. And he tried this Raya strategy he began to implement come 2019.
And I'm hitting 2019 hard by releasing a show called Best Friends that I shot with Evan.
Big things come in small packages.
An animated storytime series about crazy shit that's gone down in my life.
Boy, Storytime animations? That's a big deal. And there was even an article in the Metro covering the statement that Logan Paul was making an animated series on top of his vlogs. Wow, he must be really skilled to do all of that. But he couldn't make a new channel for these videos. He had to do them on his main channel because he already had a pre-established audience on there. How would he brand it though? He called it Choch Tales. If you're like me and you have no idea what Choch means, type it up, it's a blonde douchebag, and go to the images and you'll see pictures of Jake and Logan Paul. Wow. Surface level knowledge here, but I don't think it's a stretch to say that despite Logan's rather vulgar nature, his audience is predominantly kids. And no offense to the guy, but he kind of boxed himself into a corner creatively. Considering his humour at the time, 2017-2018, was pretty crude, his audience was groomed into expecting a certain type of content from him. The edgy stuff, you know? Which already separates him from the other animators, as his language automatically makes his content geared towards an older audience, which I think would put him in the Swoozy ballpark. Alright, I've had enough talking, let's take a look at Choch Tales. Oh, from the titles alone, my thesis was correct. They're really vulgar, and there's not that many episodes. Maybe Logan's too busy right now with vlogs to animate episode 6, who knows. I'm gonna tackle these episode by episode, because there's a lot to unpack here. Without further ado, my first time making out. This segment serves as a nice wee introduction, as we see our titular protagonist Logan Paul, in the flesh, before he goes back in time to middle school. I'm gonna save you the details, because it's just a bit awkward. There's 50 seconds of the video dedicated to Logan kissing a girl, and Logan had to draw it as well. The entire thing made me feel really weird, and there was a lot of tongue imagery. Additionally, I find it hard to relate to Logan sometimes. Maybe I'm biased here, but other Storytime animators have a really friendly aura around them. And while Logan succeeds in being charismatic on voiceover, his appearance in real life, and the fact he's a millionaire that frequently shows off his wealth, and his past content just makes him less relatable by default. In Logan Paul's previous content, he would lead you to believe that he was an extrovert. Yet in this, he tries to come off like an introvert. And it comes off like he's trying to fit in with all the other animators, but he fails miserably. But there is one part of the video, which I think is relatable. The part where he's typing up kissing tutorials on YouTube, which a lot of people have done. Including myself, but yeah, kissing. It's a pretty good idea for a Storytime video. There are plenty of videos on the subject already, so it's widespread enough. But this Choch Tale isn't exactly about a first kiss. Now, Logan Paul titled it, My First Time Making Out. And maybe I'm calling this out prematurely, but the title alone makes it out to me that Logan Paul is trying to one up the competition by making his titles more extreme and raunchy. Which I've seen happen in other forms of media, particularly cartoons, and it doesn't always work out. Well, I don't know. I guess time will tell with his stories being hyperbolic and his stories being purposely raunchy for an audience response. Speaking of the audience response, mine was not that good. In case you couldn't tell, the art style is something some people could dislike. It feels like an imitation of Swoozy's art style, which changed frequently, but if I had to put a finger on it, I'd say it looks most like the one on screen right now. And Logan Paul imitating Swoozy is not a bad thing, but Swoozy's videos are really static, which is relevant because the Swoozy videos with animation were done frame by frame, and the animation in Choch Tales feels ragdoll-esque, having rigged models. Which isn't really a bad thing, it's cost effective and a giant time saver, and I'm sure that Logan Paul needs that considering he's got other things to do, like his awesome podcast and his vlogs. Making animated story times is just a side hustle for him. The time I jizzed my pants. I regret reading that. So I guess I was right about the channels being super raunchy for the purpose of an audience reaction, but at the same time it's Logan Paul. I guess I expected that much. Before this episode, I could have seen a Choch Tales as being a sort of PG-13 thing, because while making out is really weird to watch, it isn't inherently inappropriate. And then come episode 2. The notion of this series being PG-13 flew out the window as I just looked at the second episode, never mind actually watching it. This episode starts off differently, with Logan Paul being in his living room, mixing it up. Considering he's doing all the animation work, it's understandable that he would want to mix it up every so often, to keep the episodes unique. If Logan wrote these himself, I think he's a pretty alright storyteller. He knows how to drag out a simple story to about 4 or 5 minutes. He starts off the episode with a direct mention to the audience, and then uses that to leverage him talking about the skilled dance, and then he starts talking about girls twerking. Shit, man, aight. He talks about the belt technique, which Logan depicts using a little line, which is fair enough, but it doesn't stop it from being weird, nor does it stop it from making me uncomfortable. You know what? I'm gonna let this scene play out because it's really good at showing my secondhand embarrassment.
So I waddled over to Trisha, erection safely tucked in the belt line like every other boy at the dance. She grabbed my hands, put them on her hips, and started grinding harder than a single mother working 3 jobs in a low-income neighborhood. It was amazing! Everything I had ever dreamed of was coming true. Senior girl dancing with me. Freshman noodle-armed Logan. I had done it, and it felt great! But suddenly, it started feeling too great. I felt some type of euphoria. I wasn't sure what was happening, and then BAM! The song was over, so Trisha hugged me and walked away, but alas, as I looked down, I had realized I had jizzed my pants.
These videos are not appropriate for children at all. And you could argue that Logan's target audience is 18-year-olds because he talks about sexual stuff, but not really, because if you've seen a Logan Paul made up prior to 2020, it mainly consists of 12-year-olds. In fact, even when he did change his content up, his fanbase were still predominantly kids. So why would he make a story time on jizz in his pants and go that in detail with it? The other animators that cater towards an older audience, to my knowledge, never did anything like this. It's just hard to watch. And probably the worst part about it all is the constant sound effects, which just make it all the more awkward. It's like a Johnny Test episode, but instead of some random plot about bling bling stealing a girl, it's Logan Paul talking about the time he ejaculated into his own pants. I'll tell you what though, this has got to be the first time I've seen the new videos every Thursday banner at the end of the video, and boy, I can't wait to see how long he kept that up for. My first fight. This is the first episode of Choch Tales I would actively say isn't that bad or overly awkward, but don't be worried, it still has that Logan Paul charm, which may make it better or worse for you, I don't know. This episode revolves around Logan Paul in 6th grade, when he was 11 years old, at a school camp, and how some kid in his school was just being an idiot and annoying everyone. I can relate to Logan in this exact situation. Being a man that's been in plenty of fights over my lifetime, I've either been the underdog or the big guy being an asshole. There's no in between. And I relate to this episode, not because it awakens some traumatizing and repressed memories, and making me feel excruciating secondhand embarrassment, but because it reminds me of the days when I was just a dumb kid being an asshole. A big thing with storytime animations is secondhand embarrassment, and the main character being an awkward introvert, and I mentioned it earlier on, but Logan Paul doesn't exactly fit into the same mold as, I don't know, James from The Odd Ones Out. Regardless whether or not he gives the pretense that the episode took place before he was really buff, and whilst the episode is a bit relatable, and sure, it is up there on terms of being the best Choch Tales saga, you have to admit though, Logan is caught in the middle, neither being a shy nerdy kid or a jock. He's just floating somewhere in the middle, desperately trying to be both. And considering that Logan Paul before making storytime animations appears to be a stereotypical archetype of a jock, I would have played into the whole being jock archetype more than trying to be a nerd when I'm obviously not. And whilst it would have been more jarring in the beginning, Logan's audience and the wider community would probably respect Logan more for being himself, instead of trying to be someone he isn't. Who knows? Maybe Logan can play into his jock personality later on. And to be fair to Logan, he does play into another archetype of storytime animations, low-key hyping up their story and twisting the truth to make it more entertaining. And I'll play this clip to show it.
I grab a chair from under the table and as hard as I can throw it at his face as he's foaming at the mouth chasing me. Boom! Headshot! Right to the dome, bro. Carl collapses on the floor and he starts screaming, "I'm gonna get you! You're gonna pay for this, you son of a bitch!" I'm like, shit, bro, I gotta go treat my arm. So I run away. Word quickly spread and the counselors decided that throwing a padlock at a kid's face and chewing a hole in my arm was enough evidence to send Carl home. And little 6th grade Logan was hailed as the chair-throwing hero. We all got a good sleep that night and lived rabies-free, happily ever after.
No offense, dog, but even if you were 11 and you threw a chair at an 11-year-old and hit him in the head, he would probably either be concussed, bleeding out, or have severe brain damage, even if you were 11 years old as well. Also, objectively, there's no way a camp counselor would look at that situation and deem Logan Paul to be the good guy. Okay, deadass, this episode comes off like a post in r/that happened. That time I was catfished, by far the worst episode. I vividly remember Logan Paul calling KSI sexist during their wee skerfuffle, and during this entire series, a majority of it is just sexualizing women. Heck, I even commented that in the video a year ago. I don't even know why. Oh wait, I do. I've watched a lot of Logan Paul's podcast because I got really bored during lockdown, and this guy is a lot more level-headed than his videos would have you believe. He should have just been more level-headed in these videos and not hype everything up so much, because it just perpetuates the opinion that he's an asshole. I'm not trying to dog on Logan Paul's voice acting here at all, because he does a great job here. It's just one, the tone of the story just isn't that exciting to warrant coming off that eccentric. And secondly, the animation doesn't keep up or necessarily match what's going on. Like dog, this doesn't exactly convey the same level of excitement as heard in Logan Paul's voice.
What the fuck? Did I just read that right?
Although, to be fair to Logan, he is busy with his other endeavours, so I can understand why he doesn't dump tens of hours into his animation. Oh yeah, I didn't cover the episode. Oops. This episode pertains around Logan Paul having a crush on a girl and then wanting to get to know her better. So he asks his friend for her number for some odd reason, and then he talks to quote unquote her, and it's just a load of texting until he gets a photo. What's the photo, you may be asking? Logan's friend. Wow. Also, I find this funny tidbit of hypocrisy maybe.
A dress or a skirt?
I don't know. I like dresses. Not on me though. Not like for me. Like not for personal reasons. I like dresses on girls.
This something it's not. You're the type of people that will look at it and are like, no, men gotta be men and they can't wear dresses.
Listen, none of us
Suck a dick, bro. I would do this in a heartbeat.
No one's.
But this episode is really boring. Boy, I hope he improves it for next time. The most embarrassing moment in my life. Logan Paul finally plays into his wrestling career and talks about stuff that isn't really that cringy at all. In this episode, Logan Paul talks about the time he wrestled a guy called Dominic Abinator and got fucked. The episode is mostly lighthearted, as Logan finally gives insight into what his life was like as a wrestler, which is pleasant to see because it contrasts the previous 4 episodes, which were drenched in secondhand embarrassment and moments I don't want to hear about at all. Too much information, Logan. Too much. Shonen protagonist Logan Paul is the underdog in this fight. He manages to get the upper hand for a brief amount of time, until he gets dumb fucked by our man Dominic. Also, it's pretty funny that the local newspaper got a photo of it. It's not relatable to everyone, but being involved in my school sports team, despite the fact that I was pretty shit, I've had friends get embarrassing photos taken of them, and even though there's only one photo of me playing sport, it's me on the ground doing fuck all. And if that doesn't say much about my athletic prowess, I don't know what will. So I'll tell you what, Logan Paul, fair play. You finally made a good, alright episode of Choch Tales. The animation isn't any better or worse, and the sound effects are as obnoxious as they've always been, but they fit slightly better here, in an action context. At least I think they do. Having hyperbolic sound effects fit much better when the scene contains action, instead of having these sound effects when you're talking about 14-year-olds French kissing. At the end of the 5th episode, it says, new episodes every Thursday. What happened to that? Well, to be fair, Logan Paul does have a podcast to do. He had vlogs to make, on top of preparing for a boxing match. He won. So maybe him animating Choch Tales fell to the wayside, or maybe another person animated it for him, and Logan didn't commission any more episodes. Yeah, you know, maybe Logan Paul didn't animate these by himself, and yeah, I'm starting to believe that. The guy isn't exactly known for his good art. Heck, the guy doesn't even edit his own stuff, so I kinda doubt that he has the ability to draw and animate. So who did animate these videos? I checked the description, no mention there. I checked the comments, something else YT mentioned it a few times, and he said that Logan needed to credit the artist. Logan gave seemingly no response, and then after that, the Odd Ones Out mentioned it in one of his videos that was shown when he guest starred on Impulsive, but Logan and company glossed over it, never mentioning whether or not Logan animated it or not. By the way guys, if it wasn't obvious, there's a 99.9% chance Logan Paul did not animate this, which leaves the artist unknown. Which kinda sucks, because regardless whether or not I'm iffing the animation and the art of the series, I still respect it, as it's better than anything I or my friends could ever muster up. Also, Fair play to the animator for getting the Logan Paul bag. There is also the idea that the artist may want to remain anonymous, which is also fair enough, as having Logan Paul in your portfolio, regardless whether or not he's changed, is questionable. Although, I'd opt that Logan just didn't give credit for whatever reason, which is really annoying to see, because artists deserve to have credit for their work. Unless Logan did do all the work himself, and despite my gut telling me he didn't, if he did, fair play. Choch Tales isn't very good. It's above average sometimes. The only real appealing episode is the last one because it gives insight into Logan's career in wrestling, which I would have liked to see more of. And why didn't Logan talk about anything cool that happened recently? Why not talk about some cool sparring partner? Or the time he bought a pig? Or something more interesting? Storytime animations are meant to tell a story, but also connect the viewer to the creator in a way other content can't. And while Logan Paul talks about some stories that weren't public, he either makes them really awkward to watch, with weird visuals, overtly sexual way that isn't common in other Storytime videos, voiceover that is good, but it feels more like a performance to a large audience instead of a one-to-one conversation, which you may prefer, but I personally don't. And in other episodes, like the camp one, it just felt like hyperbole on what happened, which is pretty common with other Storytime animation videos, but it doesn't make it any less of a problem. God, I've watched too much Logan Paul. I need a break, and you need a break too. Why not watch my other videos as a break? Anyways, like, subscribe, thanks for watching, and have yourself a damn good one. Bye.